Hi everyone, Lisa and Dan here from Fireside Strategic. We're on a mission to build a warmer, more human, and more profitable business world. In the Fireside Chat series, we're celebrating inspiring leaders who care both about the strategic and human side of building great organizations. Right now, we're excited to be chatting with Neal Gorenflo, co-founder and executive director of Shareable. Neal, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Great to be here. Lisa and Dan.
Neal, would love to hear a little bit more about what is Shareable?
Yeah, so Shareable is an NGO. We founded in 2009. Our mission is to empower people to share, and we do that through our solutions journalism, our campaigns, and our consulting work. And we help leaders around the world achieve their goals through sharing and all kinds of resource sharing management. And as an example, one of our clients is is Seoul Metropolitan Government, who has a Sharing Cities program, one of the leading ones in the world that we've helped them launch and have advised them along the way. And it's actually Sharing Cities is a movement we started or catalyzed at least in 2011. And now there are over 100 sharing cities around the world of some form, Seoul being one of the leading lights.
We'd love to delve deeper into what it means to be a sharing city in a little bit, but before we do, just to set the scene for our audience of CEOs, I'm curious, Neal, what was the catalyst for starting the NGO in the first place?
Yeah, the catalyst for me personally, so there are some strains and different sides of the story, but from my perspective, there were two bits. First, it was a strategic insight that at the time, around 2004, 2005, there was something missing from the sustainability wave that was cresting. It was about a lot of technical innovation and not a lot of social innovation, and I felt like social innovation was the more important component, actually, and that sharing represented that, and that sharing represented a huge opportunity. That was my insight. So I had that kind of motivation to do something about it, or at least an insight as a building block of the motivation. But I also had an experience where I had a moment of satori. I was on a business trip. I was traveling a lot. I was working in the strategy department of a big multinational corporation. I was wondering where I was going. Actually, I'll set the scene for you is the actual moment. So I was kind of half living at this airport hotel. It was a weekend. It was Saturday morning. I was going to go on a jog through this business park, my normal route. I got to the top of the first hill, where I was going to take a turn, stopped in the parking lot, and just started crying. I mean, I was just like, what am I doing? Is this the path I want to be on? I felt like I was a bit lonely and disconnected from my passions through all the traveling that I was doing. And there was a lot of cool stuff happening back in San Francisco. And then the internal conversation got deeper. And my life flashed in front of my eyes, and I saw a thread that connected everything. And that thread was that I had been doing life all alone. And that it was an incredible struggle. And that I was at 40 or so years old, I was half made. I was not complete and didn't feel like an adult. On the exterior, I had the trimmings of a successful life, but I did not feel successful on the inside at all. And I needed to do something different. And there I fell on my knees and just, asked the sky, the creator, whoever, what to do. No answer came, but I just vowed to try to find out, and, got up, dusted off my knees, ran back to my hotel room and sent in my letter of resignation, and got the first flight back home to California with a vow in my heart to do whatever I could to create a world and a life, based on sharing, where, community, finding community, being part of community, finding meaningful work, having great conversations all the time, and great relationships, that those things would be more easy to find and create with others. So that was kind of my vow and mission, and that eventually then did lead to founding Shareable.
So it was almost as if it's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing it. It's almost as if the disconnection, the isolation, the loneliness, the incompleteness that you felt, you realized, man, if I'm feeling this, there's got to be lots of other people that are feeling this.
Yeah, and I think that was the big, that's very accurate. That was really what got me motivated. It wasn't so much about myself, but when I saw how my story was, I wasn't alone in that story at all, or in that condition, that it was like widespread, and even people in more dire, of course, circumstances than this sort of, soft-handed PowerPoint shuffler, right? And that really got me. That was like, okay, the universe put it in my face. It was like, man, you couldn't be ignored. Then I was like, okay, I'm out of here. And that's why it was such a drastic, and quick break. There was a lot of lead up, and then I just needed this push. I think, I was scared to make a move. I was not sure what to do, and so this moment was the kind of spiritual fuel.
It's so beautiful, and I think you're absolutely spot on that loneliness and isolation within business, but also much more broadly, is this massive epidemic in the US and in the world right now. And I think it's incredible that you used your own story to inspire and then build an entire organization that helps with this.
Yeah, and I would have to just credit, I'm a co-founder, and so our work, I talked about this movement, the Sharing Cities, we're a catalyst, we're a small organization, but the leadership style is one of kind of being part of an ecosystem and being a catalyst. And inviting people into the change, and providing tools and inspiration to join in and let the movement be shaped by those who are invited in. So it is a particular style of leadership that in a way we have to pursue because of our limited resources, and every organization has limited resources. So that's kind of what we've done and how we've had an impact.
I love that. Would you mind giving us a little bit more color on what types of things are shared on Shareable? And as part of that, if you could explain what a sharing city is, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Yes, so some basics then. So the core of our program is our solutions journalism. And solutions journalism is taking the rigors of professional journalism. Instead of talking about problems, you talk about solutions, but you do it in a rigorous way. So we follow that methodology, and so our site is an archive of 5,000 stories of sharing solutions from around the world, and our kind of content strategy is find stories and create content that inspire and empower. So tell a story about something that has worked and tell it from the inside out, the voices of those who are the leaders and the contributors to that project, and give the audience, give the readers, our community leaders from all over the world, our community, give them enough information so they understand how this works, what are the benefits of it, and what the challenges of a solution are. And these solutions can be all kinds of things. One thing that we're focusing on now is the role that libraries are playing in communities, and how they are lending more than just books, also bicycles, tools, toys, camping equipment, sporting equipment, small appliances, all of this. This is a building trend. But it could be, the solutions could be a cooperative, a time bank, a tool library. We're really interested in grassroots solutions, those things that, any ordinary person can get together with their neighbors and start it without permission, without a lot of money. And so, yeah, that's the inspire part. And then the empower part is write a how-to, write a guide, so people can, get the guide and make it happen. And so, we've done a reader survey recently, and it showed that 25% of respondents started a project from reading Shareable. 75% found a alternative economic solution that they didn't know about before and connected to it. And then around 50% changed their life in a positive way from reading Shareable. So that's a big piece of it is that's on our site, shareable.net. We also publish ebooks. So, our most widely distributed ebook is the one on the movement we started called Sharing Cities, Activating the Urban Commons. And so we can talk about sharing cities and what that is. Yeah.
Would love to talk about sharing cities. Just before we do, I also want to highlight for the audience how cool it is that you do solution-oriented journalism, because we know so much journalism is so negative. If we spend our time watching the mainstream news, we can easily end up pretty depressed afterwards. And so it feels like optimism is such a huge theme in your work, to actually make people realize, wait a second, we don't have to be immersed in a problem. We don't have to lead ourselves to suffer through the news unnecessarily. Because if we just connect the news and suffering all the time, like, really, I have to suffer in order to be informed? It shouldn't have to be that way.
Right, exactly. And that's a really great point. And I would add, too, that, optimism is a part of it, I would say, but it's more realistic optimism or grounded optimism, right? Grounded in stories of people actually making a difference. So it's pragmatic, it's practical, and it works to, like you say, I think, try to balance out this incredible volume of bad news that we're exposed to. And the media is biased towards that. That's what sells. If it bleeds, it leads, right? And that's the old saying in journalism, right? So stories about disaster, about scandal, etc., that sells in newspapers, that gets clicks, and so that gets emphasized. And I think that can give a really distorted view for people about the world. I definitely believe we're in a kind of era of crisis. Yet at the same time, parallel to that is an other world where incredible solutions are being developed, and those don't get enough airtime. And the things that particularly don't get enough airtime are the things that ordinary people can do to take control of their own destiny, right? A lot of the solutions that get airtime are technologically oriented and involve high capital investment, right? Yeah. And so we try to balance this out, and that's part of the inspire and empower. It's like, look, there's another way. There is another perspective.
In a way, if we start to associate solutions exclusively with high capital intensive sort of investments, then it can kind of compound the depression sometimes. It can make people think, well, man, for me to achieve anything, I've got to become Elon Musk, right? And that's not true. There's all kinds of practical things people can do to improve their lives.
Yeah, exactly. And in this last, starting in January, I started this kind of life experiment that I'm blogging on Shareable called the Year of Living Locally. And, I just decided to shift my balance of my attention, from kind of global national concerns to what's happening right underneath my feet here in my community and city of Mountain View, California, right? And this neighborhood that I live in called Cypress Point. And one thing that we found, when I gathered our neighbors together, is that our irrigation system is out of date and extremely wasteful. We are on 5 acres, 57 homes, and in 2019, we used 1.29 million gallons of water, right? So there was a lot of leaks. We fixed them all, and now we're on track to save 500,000 gallons of water per year. And this is in California, right? So, it's a start, right? But it's an example of, you don't have to be Elon Musk. There is something significant you can do right in your backyard if you pay attention, if you learn what's going on, right? If you get together with your neighbors.
Yeah. Awesome. And is that a great segue to telling us a little bit more about the Sharing Cities program?
Yeah, sure. So Sharing Cities is a kind of we shaped it as a movement, and that cities can get involved in, and we really haven't like defined strictly Sharing Cities. There are more. There is a set of principles which are in our book that you can get at shareable.net and download the book. But the general idea is a city, of, by, and for the people that is managed to meet by people to meet their needs, right? And through a kind of political economy of the commons. And you can think of the commons as part of three major ways of organizing resources or managing resources. There's the market, there's the government, and then there's the commons. And the commons are the people-powered version of managing resources. So things like co-ops and credit unions and time banks and community currencies, co-working, co-housing, resident developed real estate, residential real estate, right? And owned and managed as well. Those are the things like public banking and participatory budgeting, where citizens decide how the city budget is spent, or a piece of it is spent, right? There's a whole, this is what Shareable describes, is a whole world of kind of people-powered resource management methods that are proven, that are worldwide, but not yet scaled to the level they need to be to meet the challenges we have out there in this era of crisis, right? So this is the ace up our sleeve, right? When the market and the government fail us, we've got each other. That's the important message that the Sharing Cities movement tells. And so Sharing Cities is about organizing cities along those lines, with those principles, with that kind of paradigm.
I love that. Those are such important principles to create a more cohesive society, a better society. What I'm curious about is, how do you help implement that? I mean, people know that this is important. I'm glad that there are resources out there, and I'm glad that cities are now becoming aware of this. But what do you do to help make it a reality?
Yeah. There's steps to that, steps and stages, and also it's a work in progress. But the first stage is awareness and examples and principles, right? So we are, I would say, gotten underway in that stage, where it's not the beginning, but it's not the end of the beginning, right? And certain cities are ahead of others. Seoul has been doing Sharing Cities since 2012. So they have a very robust program. There's a newer effort in Sweden called Sharing Cities Sweden, and this represents a next step. So whereas in the past, Sharing Cities has had a kind of digital thing, like what we can do with platforms, right? And how can we manage platforms locally to deliver on a city's goals, right? That is shifting. It's becoming more commons oriented, not necessarily about platforms. And also a new thing that's being added in is developing residential real estate projects with sharing in mind. So we may be taking a next step from green building to something like social building, where the built environment is designed to build community and optimize our sharing of resources. And so, so implementation can take a lot of different forms. One is like a policy direction, where you're just developing policies. That's what San Francisco did. Was mixed success, I would say, there. Seoul, they had 3 pillars: policy, making government resources more available to citizens, and entrepreneurship, and then also promotion for a kind of sharing lifestyle for all the citizens in Seoul. So that was one example of an a couple examples of implementations.
It's very cool. It's very important work. I can't help but be particularly curious. The COVID-19 pandemic has completely upended the way cities are run, the way people work and live and move within cities. How has the pandemic impacted your work?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's impacted our work a lot. I mean, we had to totally shift our editorial agenda, on a dime. We had a plan for 2019 and threw it out the window. Half the projects that we were working on were canceled. And so we had to pivot and find new projects. And, I'm really proud of my team that we were able to do that pretty successfully, and not panic, not freak out, just execute, and do it pretty calmly. We're, turning the corner. I mean, it probably sounds like what a lot of organizations are doing, but it's been a struggle too. So, and then, for sharing cities out there, it's paused things. They've had to shift. At the same time, there's more sharing happening than ever in cities in the form of mutual aid. Is that the gaps that we show in government services, because of austerity, because of sort of neoliberal economic policies, this is getting filled by people. People are rolling up their sleeves and finding ways to help their neighbors in all kinds of ways. At the neighborhood scale, mutual aid, helping people get groceries and meds, and raising funds together, doing food collections. A lot of it is organized around food and also housing.
No question, Neal. You've got very ambitious goals at Shareable. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about this team that's executing so well. Could you tell us sort of the size of the team, a little bit more about them, and how you lead them?
Yes. We're a small team. We're 4 full-time employees. We have our board of directors, which is five people, and also an editorial advisory board. It's like 20 or so people. And then, we have our global network of editors and writers. So that's, around 30 folks. And then we have our larger movement, and the core of that is probably in the few thousand. So the staff piece is a small part of it. And I'm the executive director, and, legally speaking, I'm, the buck stops here and so forth, and kind of the face of the organization, but we run very flat. How do you run it? That's when I heard that question, Dan, I was like, oh, I really don't run it. we run it together, so, and, my boss is the board of directors. So, and all our funders. So, that's the thing that I keep, my eye on are, how can we have the biggest impact possible, and how can we get support for that, and the fuel to make it happen.
It makes so much sense. I'm curious, you said you used to be in a strategy department of a big company. What was that transition like from working in the strategy department of a big company to leading a flat but very impactful nonprofit organization?
I'd say it was a bumpy one, I'm not sure I could claim that I did a great job at that transition. The main attribute was just determination and commitment, and, being also open to learning and, listening and changing as needed. So, so it was, bumpy, but, very enriching, and I'm a different person, and I think better in some important ways. from the process.
Yeah, it sounds like you're much better aligned today, right? That Satori moment when something communicated to you, this direction may not make sense. It was beyond a signal about how you can contribute to others. It was a signal that you weren't perfectly aligned, and now you find yourself, I think, much better aligned. Is that fair?
That's true. And what I realized too was like being aligned, connecting with your purpose and a mission, is incredible fuel. And one thing I learned is, when I made that shift of kind of doing life alone to being part of a community and a sharing community where we help one another, realize our ambitions and connect to our passions and develop as humans, that you have to be careful not to put limits on what can be accomplished. That's part of the, I think a bureaucratic kind of system is a nice kind of backstop and starting place of kind of planning where you have your 1 year or 3 year or 5 year plan. And it's a good way to educate your team and get everyone on the same page about the challenges and everything. And there should be a kind of another side, which is like, don't put a limit on what can happen, because what can happen can be much greater and much qualitatively better than you can even imagine, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the big shift in my mentality. It is that there was this potential for a kind of quantum leap in development or in what can unfold in terms of impact in the world.
And speaking of which, I'm curious, now that you've done this wonderful work with cities, you're very, very engaged locally, you do a sort of grounded, optimistic form of journalism, you've accomplished a lot, but what's next? What does the quantum leap look for you? Where do you want to take Shareable next?
Yeah, I have some ideas, and I can share those, and yet, we also aren't aligned as an organization yet. We haven't decided on this. These are just, options on the menu right now, right? But, some of the directions, one thing I'm thinking about is this concept of sharing hubs that we've been developing where, we sort of combine the insights that we've gotten about how locally this movement unfolds with how it can operate on a global scale. And so a sharing hub would use a library and school as a place, as the hub for all kinds of sharing activity in the sort of people's economy, right? And to use our media expertise to mobilize communities, to improve their social environmental performance and meet those disparities or close those disparities. And I feel like cities have a tall order to meet the needs that crises like climate change and so forth face. But the thing that they're not really, that isn't their expertise is in mobilizing people. That's not what they do. So there needs to be there's opportunity there. That's my kind of insight as a sort of social entrepreneur. There's a big need and a missing piece in that, in mobilizing the public to meet challenges, because the cities aren't going to be able to do it all on their own anymore. Their budgets are inadequate, and what needs to be done can't be done in the old bureaucratic way of organizing. They don't have enough money anyway. So the asset that they have to mobilize is a human asset, the human resources, right? So that's a kind of direction also. And then, kind of complementing that would be a kind of global network to support sharing hubs, in their development and growth and impact.
Those are some lofty goals. I love it. So a question that we like to wrap up every interview with is, look, we've talked about so many interesting and somewhat intense topics, but we're very curious, behind Shareable, behind the business, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, I love to be outside, surfing, hiking, biking, preferably with the loved ones, I'll give you an example. Just on Sunday, I went on a hike at a little county park in Pacifica, California. It's on the coast. And I went around dusk, and the sun was setting while I was at the top of this ridge, and I saw it set as the fog was rolling in off the coast, and it created this incredible orange glow in the sky, and profiled all the trees and everything. And then as I was hiking back to the car, I heard an eagle and also an owl. And so it was just, that's the kind of thing that really re-energizes me, and where I go to, kind of find inspiration, power, to be refreshed as a person.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
You could also be a poet if you're ever looking to make that as part of the content. That's so beautiful. I can only imagine. I'm a little jealous of your beautiful California sunsets. That's amazing.
But there's, the thing is that's really cool. It's like every moment. I mean, you speak about a poet, and there is a piece of my heart that's a poet, yes. And I was coming home from lunch the other day, and there was a guy strolling in our street with a guitar, and he says, "Hey, brother, from another mother, do you want to hear a song?" Right? And he's this guy who's wearing this bright yellow shirt, and I was like, "Sure." Right? So he played 2 songs for me, "Leaving on a Jet Plane" and "Rocket Man," and this guy was unbelievable. It was like, and it was such a gift, and everyone you meet has some gift, and you have a gift to share as well. Every moment can be that kind of form of connection if you look for it, if you create it. And that's part of, I think, the shareable philosophy as well,
Oh, I love that. What a beautiful message to wrap up with. Neal, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, to share your insights, to inspire us. We really enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.